This is Mark Ponzio coming to you from BCC Studios. We have an update for you about the Brooklyn Crokinole Championship, September 2021 and 22 of this year, 2024. This is going to be an informational about sort of getting to know Brooklyn a little bit and the hotels and accommodations, and a little bit about traveling around if you've never been in the New York City or Brooklyn area. Um, if you are a local and are participating in the tournament, most of this information will be something you're very familiar with and very comfortable with. But for those who are traveling and aren't as familiar with New York, this will be kind of useful information, so stick around. Okay, so moving on to the overview. Basically, what we're going to cover here is a couple of hotel options for when you're coming for the tournament. We have one very central location and one alternative that's a little cheaper, but we'll discuss that as we get down the list. We're going to talk about the area, what to see in the Brooklyn area, what you might like to enjoy or travel to, or sort of where you are going to be and what the area includes. And then at the end, we'll talk about just basic travel in and around New York City. This is a huge topic that you could go on hours and hours and hours for, but for today, we're just covering very, very minimalistic kind of basics. So first off, sorry about this, but we're going to go over some basic geography because a lot of people, even in the tri-state area, a lot of people don't know this. So this area in orange here is Brooklyn. Most people are familiar with the shape of Manhattan, but they're not really quite sure where Brooklyn is compared to Queens and Staten Island. So this just gives you an idea. Brooklyn is kind of south and east of Manhattan. Moving on, this is more the picture you're probably more used to. This is a Google Maps version of Brooklyn, and I've kind of circled the Brooklyn, pretty much the entirety of the Brooklyn borough. But right there, you'll see that yellow star in the middle there. That's Prospect Park. We're going to keep an eye on that as a good point of reference as we kind of zoom in on the areas where we will be running our events and having our competition. Okay, so for the next slide here, what we see here is Park Slope, Brooklyn. It's named Park Slope because Prospect Park, with the yellow star on it, is a very central and iconic park in Brooklyn, very much like Central Park is to Manhattan. And that neighborhood, Park Slope, is literally down a gradual slope off of the park. So the name is rather obvious. But the thing to know about this area, Park Slope, Brooklyn, is it's one of the nicest neighborhoods in Brooklyn. This is literally an area where families live. This is an area where it's residential. It's literally right next to the park. You'll find multi-million-dollar brownstones. Brownstones are like connected houses for those of you who are not familiar with the New York architecture and New York buildings. But essentially very, very fancy and wealthy neighborhood with a lot of great shopping and a lot of great restaurants. And there's just a ton of things to do in this area. So this is a wonderful neighborhood to experience. So if you are traveling and competing in our tournament and you have some free time either before or after the events, or you'd like to just get to know the neighborhood a little bit, this is sort of going to be your home base. And I highly recommend you take some time and look around. Now, the first thing you should understand about Park Slope, having lived in the area for years, is that all the action happens on these red lines that I've drawn in here. This is essentially the avenues, not the streets. The streets are where people live. Generally, there's all residential housing. The avenues are where all the businesses and stores and restaurants are. So if you're in the Park Slope area and you find yourself in the middle of a street, you'll notice that there's almost no shopping on the street level, but the avenues have everything. You'll figure that out fairly quickly. Moving along to our events that are going to be taking place for the tournament. On Friday, the first event is our meet and greet social. It's the 5-hole Friday. That's going to be at Rulo's. Now, you can still see that yellow star on the right side of the picture there. That's Prospect Park. So to give you an idea of how far away and where things are, we've put a little red star. That's Rulo's Bar. That's where we're going to be doing our Friday night event. This is all to just give you a little bit of a visual cue and sort of an idea of how far away things are and where everything's going to be taking place. Now that's Rulo's. Moving on to the Saturday tournament, you see this green-lined blue star here that's called out by this whole yellow arrow and everything. That's the American Legion. That's where we're going to be doing our tournament. So now, if you look closely, you can see that it's about 7 or 8 blocks away from Rulo's. So these two locations are within, less than a mile, definitely, but within walking distance for sure. It might be a few minutes walk, but it's a completely possible walk right there. So what I want to show you next is the hotel block that we reserved. We have booked out 15 rooms at the La Quinta, which is a hotel run by Wyndham, or owned by Wyndham. This hotel has a reserved rate. The location is really quite perfect because it's, as you can see in the picture, directly in between two of the three events geographically that we're going to be running over the weekend. So if you want the most convenient hotel, this is probably your number one option. We've reserved it. I'm going to give you all the details on how to actually take advantage of that reservation. There's a link that we're going to post below. Additionally, there's a code if you want to call in and call the hotel directly. But there are 15 rooms that are double occupancy rooms that have been reserved and set aside for our group at a stable rate that will not change. For those of you who are out of town, you may have been looking at hotel prices in New York and have been fairly scared, and I don't blame you. It's kind of expensive to reserve a hotel in New York City. We know this, so we've been doing a lot of research trying to make sure that we could get you something that was reasonable. The rate we got will be less than $200 a night per person, which it was fairly reasonable for the area. If that is giving you a heart attack, hang on. We have a cheaper option, but we'll talk about that as we move on. But this location is ideal because it'll allow you to walk to both the Friday night and the Saturday events without having to catch a cab or get on a subway or anything. And it's literally in more or less the same neighborhood. Just as a point of reference as well, you can see that all of our events are sort of south and west of the main area of Park Slope. The closer you get to the park, sort of the nicer and fancier everything becomes. So, if you want to explore, I recommend you explore by going northeast from any one of the events, or northeast from the hotel room. That's kind of the best way to go in this area. Okay, so this is the La Quinta option. Here are some of the details. The address, the proper address for mailing is 533 3rd Avenue, Brooklyn. The price per night is $329. That's before taxes, so it will be more. But again, these are double occupancy rooms, so you can split that up with someone, hopefully your Crokinole partner, and then you can save some money that way. As I mentioned, we'll post the link, and the reservation block ends on August 30th. So if you are going to take advantage of this reservation, you must do it by August 30th. Otherwise, the prices will start to vary, and the rooms will no longer be guaranteed. Okay, so here's your alternative. For the more adventurous, for the locals who know how to travel by subway and are a little more comfortable getting in and around New York, we have a much cheaper option. This is the Quality Inn run by Choice Hotels. You can see in the purple triangle there, we've kept most of the same references. You can see the yellow star, that's Prospect Park, Rulo's in red, and the American Legion is green and blue. Down in the bottom left corner, this is a different hotel. It's the Quality Inn in Sunset Park. It's literally about 2.2 miles away. So it is not a walkable distance for most people. It is a straight shot. It's right down 3rd Avenue, so it's not a very complicated trip, but you're going to be passing some major highways and in underpasses and going through a lot of streets. So it's actually a distance, and you will at least most likely have to do either subway or a cab ride to get between this hotel and the events. If that doesn't bother you, if you're comfortable with the subway system, if you know your way around Brooklyn, this is a good place. It has several benefits. The current rates for this hotel are approximately $220 a night. If you book now or very soon, you're likely to get a rate very close to that. Again, if you're booking with a partner, that comes closer to $100 a night, which is great. The only downside, obviously, is taking a cab for a couple of miles in New York is sometimes a $30 or $40 prospect, and doing that over and over and over again can be expensive. In the morning on the way to the event, in the evening on the way back, morning the next day on the way back, and so on and so forth. So you could also take subways. There is a way to do it by subway, which is not unreasonable. But then again, a lot of people who aren't familiar with Brooklyn and New York are not, sometimes they're a little intimidated jumping into the subway system. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we go forward. But here's all the contact information for the Quality Inn. The proper address is 4410 3rd Avenue, Brooklyn, 11220. The phone number is listed here. This is definitely cheaper, as I mentioned. This is one of the pros. Additionally, about 4 blocks away from the Quality Inn, there's a really great shopping area, an area that's called, Industry City. It's about five repurposed industry buildings that have been made into sort of a continuous mall. It's where the BCC holds a regular event with the Brooklyn Game Night. We've had a few pictures of us, doing events there. But generally, it's a really great place. It's got foods, it's got different restaurants, it's got shops, it's got all kinds of stuff. A lot of interest. You could literally spend like a whole day there and just walking around, looking at things, and enjoying yourself. As I mentioned, the major con for this location is that it's 2.2 miles away, so you will need to figure out some kind of travel. Additionally, this is not a reserved reservation block like with the La Quinta, so your prices will vary. You may find something cheaper, you may find something more expensive, or maybe the price of the hotel will naturally go up as the dates change. In New York, generally, you should book as early as possible. 2, 3 months, 4 months in advance is not unreasonable because the prices do sort of change suddenly and unexpectedly. So please, if you're interested in this option, book now, as it will save you money and time. Okay, so just a little bit about getting around New York. For those of you who are trying to be a little more adventurous and are not familiar with the subway system, the New York system used to use, way back in the day, tokens. Then after a while, it started using Metro cards, which are these little flimsy credit card type cards. But then it's sort of gotten away from those. I believe you can still use those. You can still purchase them at vending machines, but ultimately what most people do and what most New Yorkers do is use the Omni system. Essentially, it's just a tap to pay like you would do at any grocery store or convenience store. Just get your credit card set up on your phone, and you can walk up to any turnstile and just use your tap to pay system, and it will pay, like it'll take the money directly off of whatever card you're using. And that's literally it. In fact, there's a system with that where you can get a benefit if you use multiple rides. By like after the 12th ride in a given week, every other ride for that week is free. But I doubt anyone's going to be doing that many rides, unless of course you're using one phone or one credit card to pay for 4 people, and you go on several trips in a weekend. But ultimately, you're going to be using the subway if you're interested. The other options in New York, of course, are the yellow taxis, the Ubers, and the Lyfts. Just keep in mind that Uber and Lyft have congestion pricing. They get more expensive based on the time of day. So if you're traveling around rush hour or during a major event or holiday, it's going to be a different price than if you just need to go somewhere on a random Tuesday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay, so yes, those are generally the best ways. There's also city buses, which are more or less exactly the same as the subway. You sort of just tap as you get into the bus, and make sure you pick up the correct bus, read all the signs, and you kind of have to figure it out. Okay, so that covers sort of the local area. I'm not going to get into the 10 million different museums and monuments and parks and other things you can do in New York. Obviously, that's one of the major draws of New York, and I'm sure you're aware that as a travel destination, it's ideal. But this is just one small corner of Brooklyn where we will be doing our event and some of the interesting things you can do in that area. Just a quick word on safety in Brooklyn and New York in general. There's a lot of misconceptions out there about the amount of danger and violence of walking around, or danger, violence, and crime walking around New York and Brooklyn. A lot of people who've never been to the city or haven't experienced it, they don't really know what to expect. All they've seen before a lot of times is horror stories on the news about shootings and crimes that go on. And the truth of the matter is, New York City is a big city. We have about 9 million people in New York in general. About 3 million of them live in Brooklyn. So you've got to keep that in mind. I mean, there's certainly crime that happens, but it might be a few miles away from you, no matter where you are, because Brooklyn and Queens and Manhattan are not that big. However, it might be millions of people between you and that crime that's happening. Additionally, you should also be aware that it's not quite as prevalent as it seems. I mean, there certainly is. There are, with that many people, there's always something going on. There's always, someone being born, someone getting into a fight, something happening at all times in all places in New York, which is part of the appeal of the city in general, that it has so much going on. But that means that some very small and predictable percentage of it's going to be sort of nefarious and not ideal. But the truth is, I've had people approach me asking if everyone carries a gun around New York City, and it's just not true. I've been living in New York for about 12 years now, and I haven't seen a gun the entire time I've been here, other than in the holster of a police officer. So the truth of the matter is, all you have to do to be safe in a city like New York, or pretty much any other major city in the U.S. or even other countries, is just use a little bit of common sense. If you see a dark, rundown, sketchy-looking area, maybe don't go in that area. Maybe turn around and go in a different direction, or call a cab and get out of that area, or get back on the subway and go to the next stop before you turn around and get back in. It's a good thing to note, if you do get off of a subway and you don't recognize the area, or you don't know what's going on, you can get right back on. Every subway is directly connected to every other subway. It can get you almost anywhere in New York. So you're never really lost if you're somehow inside of a subway in New York. Additionally, there's, you can always call 311 if you need information in the New York area, or 911 if you have an emergency, of course. But the truth is, New York is a very safe area if you just use a little bit of common sense and take care of yourself, as everyone should. So don't be afraid of traveling and visiting New York for the crime. It is not half as rampant as most people tend to think. I think that's very heavily based on what the news shows you on a given day. Thank you. I hope this was helpful. If you're planning on booking with our reserved hotel, La Quinta, the links will be below. If you're planning on checking the alternate hotel, which is theoretically cheaper, but you'll be paying for transportation, the Quality Inn, that information is, you have to back up the slide. Maybe I'll leave a quick link for that as well. But other than that, if you have any questions or significant problems with travel, please feel free to shoot us a message either through the email or on our Facebook meetup or any of our other social medias. Thank you so much for listening. Take care. Have a good day.